feel what's interesting is it's often harder to simplify than it is to complicate. So we actually have 6 topics we're going to cover, even though we titled the class with the first topic. And I'm going to apologize in advance because a lot of notes coming off of our own notes off our walls, but the topics do converge, which is one of the topics we're talking about, convergence. So if you can stay with us, but because there's so many different topics, we might not even do Q&A in between each one. So use chat aggressively. And if you rename yourself from your name, comma, company, comma, location, anyone you're chatting with, it just gives context. It's always helpful to even get a sense of people around the world, adds more community. Let me share my screen. And
welcome back if we haven't seen you in a while. I think I see Craig there. There's a few. Karen's good to see you. Yeah.
There's several things I want you to do. So how about this? I'll give you a preview of the different topics. And then we'll jump in from there. That makes sense. So the title for the class we put, so this is Leadership 233, was why leadership is so difficult in today's environment. And partly it's because you need a convergence of so many skills, but also when something goes wrong, it's very hard to debug, because when you have so many skills that need to come together, it's hard to figure out which one and what combination made it fall apart. So that topic will then go into unlocking self-drive is turning out to be the biggest challenge. This notion is very connected to the word agency, which we'll touch on. And then we'll move there into raw honesty. Is the building block of agency, and we'll touch on that a little bit. Then the danger of feedback too soon. Oftentimes when we speak, if you haven't figured out your own point of view and you start to get feedback on it, you will get misdirected. And most people see good and bad advice by thinking of other people. They're good advice givers and bad advice givers, which has a lot of truth. But we fail to see what we do to generate bad advice, what we do to constantly get misguided. And so this I think is an interesting topic.
That's well said, actually.
Yep.
Unlike a rab, what do we do to not get the feedback we need, but what do we do to not get good advice, to not get the reaction we want? Yeah.
Then we'll move into this concept of the new lazy. There's extreme optimism and extreme pessimism, as they both end up converging to the same place to do nothing. And I think this is something that's really important in training, especially mental training, where often we tend to skew on one side. And if you are an extreme pessimist or you're an extreme optimist, we tend to be quite frank, be a little disgusted by the other side. And the minute you realize it's the exact same thing, it might help you change. We tend to sort of stick to our side of the camp on this one, sort of like politics in the most extreme worst way, right? And then learning versus teaching, how they are completely opposite skills. And so there's a little cartoon, I'll show you more details there. But so that's kind of, we're going to cover through this really fast, and there's a lot of topics. So, all of it's LIP 233, right? So 6 different title pages, and we couldn't figure out which one to dive into and expand. And so we saw a connection between all 6, which I'm hoping you will follow, but we'll cover a lot of topics. So the first slide I'll start with, though, is what I thought people would notice.
I didn't even notice.
So like in each floor, so my daughter, who is 11 years old, her name is Olivia, made this last night, asked me to put this in the office. So it says, important, if you find resin ducts in the office, please do not touch. She first wanted it to say warning, and I was like, I don't think that's a good idea. And basically don't remove them. You're allowed to take pictures. Now, I think we'll eventually update this so you can move it into some other spot in the office.
That'd be cute to say you can take it and move it with
Right.
it.
So these little magnetic ducts, it sticks on anything magnet. And so she writes, for your cooperation, next jump. And so I wrote in the little corner, Olivia, founder's daughter, right? Instead of farmer's daughter, it's a founder's daughter. And so she is a pretty enterprising young kid. And so she's always trying to figure out how to make money. So she's like, Dad, what could I possibly sell you that you would buy? And in New York City, I guess the last couple of years and more recently, there are some people who like literally just spend a ton of money buying these little
Ducks.
plastic
Have you
ping
seen this
ducks.
at
I mean,
all?
they're like,
It's in this
like,
area.
they're like maybe a quarter inch, half an inch, right, tiny, right? And then,
No, but have you seen them outside the office?
Yeah, that's where you get them.
Like
You're
on the
taking it
streets.
and
You're
putting
getting them from
around.
the street?
Yeah.
This is fascinating. Go
so,
on.
so New York City is full of metal. It just fences, everything, signposts. So someone, I guess, did it for, it must have been for kids, I'm assuming. But you can't buy these things. There's ducks, there's frogs. You can't buy them with the magnet. So you literally have to buy the magnet separately and glue it, right? So because I thought you could just buy the whole thing made. So I tell my daughter, like, we've been like walking around the street every now and then. She's found like 100 ducks or something, but she won't give them to me because I thought it'd be cute to put around the office because you have a lot of metal in the office too. So she was like, how about I sell them to you? And I was like, how much would you sell it for? She's like, $1 a duck. And I was like, that's tiny. It's like such a ripoff. So then she's like, but Dad, I have to buy the magnets. I have to like hot glue it together.
Remember the
It's a
glue
whole
gun? I used to have
process,
that when I was little,
right?
the glue gun.
So she like, convinces me that this is a good investment. So I was like, fine, I'll buy 100, right? So I'll give you $100 for 100 ducks. And she's like, Dad, there's tax. And I was like, there's tax. So she's like, I'll give you 95 for 100. And I was like, God damn it. So like, I gave her $100. She's only given me 50 so far. She's like, factory making these. So I went around and just hit some around the office, and now their concern that pops in her head is people are gonna steal them, right? Her words were, they'll steal them, they'll take them, and I was like, but I'll buy more. She's like, so then she makes the sign where she doesn't want people to take the ducks, but they're like little fun places to hide them all around the office, so.
They are
anyways.
cute. They do make your day.
So public
Kathy
service
said
message.
Maria likes to find them around the office.
So
Hi,
public
Kathy,
service
how are
message,
you?
if you see the ducks in our office,
Yeah.
take a picture, you can move it to a different spot, but the goal was just to create
Just don't
treasure.
steal the ducks.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's cool. They have like a lunchbox looking thing on the street posts. And it's like a duck factory. You open it on the streets of New York and you can take a duck and then replace a duck.
Leave a duck, which of course, like some kid comes and just takes it all and then it's all gone, but nonetheless, so public service message, if you find the ducks around the office, it's supposed to be fun and playful. Anyways, not the class, obviously. All right, so this is an interesting topic, and starting with this idea, why leadership is not only so difficult, but it's so the opposite. It's the opposite skill of what we're used to from the last 100 years, which really came from the industrial age, command and control, and the notion of a leader was to basically get a large body of people to follow what your strategy is, what your decisions are, and then contribute to that. Now, most don't want to say it that way. You want to make you feel like, no, you have autonomy, your thoughts matter, your decisions, your strategy, of course it matters. Yet the reality of every aspect, if you pull it apart, you'll see it's just baked in command and control. And so the environment today is completely flipped from that. And we're having a lot of discussions, and this is actually an interesting topic. What AI does, we talked in the last leadership practice class of AI is replacing human jobs. In our belief and all the work and research we've done, we believe AI will not come close to replacing human jobs for at least another 100 years, 95 to be approximately accurate from history. And why we say this is this, but the work is changing. And I think where logical work, think of using a spreadsheet, think of analyzing. When someone says, read that and summarize it for me, AI is going to do that far faster and better and more accurately. So logical work, analytical work, if that is what you do, AI will replace that function. So then what is left is intuitive and judgment work, which is this notion of convergence, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. But we're having this discussion actually with a team at Harvard University. We may commission a study to understand kind of this future of work. What role is the role of AI, robots, technology versus what is the role of the human being? And the training and the research we believe that will come out is that if you train the right human skill, AI is a massive enhancer. AI will enhance the human skill. But of course, if the human skill you want to enhance is logical work, now AI will replace that work. So understanding this nuance, and so there's a great team that's like the there's like 3 different departments within Harvard that does this research, but they're very data intensive, going back in history. So we're meeting with the team tomorrow to kind of consider like commissioning
It
sort
came
of
out
this
of like their
research.
quantitative science,
Right.
some division. It's like very scientific, but it's really cool. Her name, Eileen McNeely, we're gonna be leading this through her, right? This connection between work and they talk about well-being, and they call it flourishing. There's like this
Uh-huh.
whole program that they run. But yeah, we're gonna get really specific into the role of AI. And I like what you're saying, that it's enhancing human skills,
So I
right?
think of the human skill plus AI enhancing it.
Yeah.
The ultimate enhancer is a teammate, not team,
Mhm.
but a teammate. That's a single individual, and that is the ultimate enhancer, but also the hardest to get. And we talked about this briefly last time. If you get the wrong teammate,
Yeah.
you can go the complete other route, which is you get to dysfunction. So we
Yes.
drew a parallel to Adam Grant's, like, givers are the most successful people in the world, but givers also are the least successful people in the world. And so the same thing can show up in opposite ends of the spectrum if you don't understand the nuances. Kind of touching on this, and so yeah, logical work, AI replacing. This is a slide from last leadership in practice class, the last one, 232. This is all around how, if you think of the old path of life, it really is like an assembly line, right? You go from school to job to savings or retirement, versus the new path requires you to pull a whole bunch of skills. And one of the key elements is when you do something routinely, when you do something on a weekly routine, monthly routine, and even twice a year routine, which, by the way, are the schematics of routine programming. So weekly, which is what military call the weekly battle rhythm. Then there's a monthly, and then twice a year. When you think of building things routinely, eventually they become automatic. You don't even think about it. The mental effort, the willpower to do something, it's so automated. And only then can it start to really converge. And what's interesting about convergence, and this is the new path and new skills, you need a lot of things to be able to converge in how to navigate ambiguity. Think of the amount of unknown there is today, the amount of chaos and the amount of information, not only new, but changing at such fast pace. It is the equivalent of walking into a pitch black dark room, and the ability to use every sense to navigate that. And that is a set of skills you train. You watch firefighters, you watch people doing things that typically get you so scared you shut down. The amount of training they need. We were reading this
Shut
thing
down
with
the mic.
Michael Phelps,
Yeah.
right? The way his coach trained him.
Yeah.
They was talking about one of the meets. He swam the whole thing blind, and what they mean is that he dove in and his goggles filled with water, so he couldn't see. And yet,
Yeah,
the
but he won
coach-
gold. I
but
mean,
he
that's
won gold,
insane. He won
right?
gold
He
because
couldn't
he trained
see.
for that.
He could not see, and
Yeah.
what happened is the coach trained him, literally doing everything wrong,
Yeah.
messing up his goggles and everything. So in practice, he trained for that condition. So when he went completely dark, he swam the whole thing practically with his eyes closed and won gold. And he narrated to himself, I've done this 1,000 times, right? And calmed himself down to navigate through to win gold. I mean, that's kind of insane, right? But convergence of skills, and the flip side of the convergence is this: when something goes wrong, it's very hard for us to debug, figure out what went wrong. When there's many things that have to converge, we're often trained very factory style to look for what's the one thing that went wrong. Where's the linchpin? What's the thing that broke apart? So as a result of it, we look for the old pathway of how life used to be. And this is the movement, by the way, of moving from a logical sort of work-oriented world, why memorization and math and science and STEM was so important, to a flip where it's not based on logic anymore, the human skill, that's based on your judgment or your intuition. This is something that's interesting when you think about convergence, this new path. The old path is easier to see, the beginning of the assembly line, the end of the assembly line, and the idea of reverse engineering to success was a common term we got used to.
Yeah.
But when you think of what happens in our minds in the beginning versus what happens in our minds once we are automated into doing something, the stories and what we even
Yeah.
react to and think and visualize, vastly different. I mean, the person who never had goggles filled with water and in a high intense Olympic or whatever sport dives in would probably just give up.
Yeah.
Whether they give up physically or whether they give up mentally, they will give up and they usually will not win. So the expert does not do that.
Right.
And it wasn't like Michael Phelps stopped and thought about it. He just, boom, the
Didn't
speed.
miss a beat,
Right,
yeah.
didn't miss a beat. And so I put over here this notion of the hard stuff is literally recognizing how vast the difference is from level 1 to what I call level 12. Level 12 is just an arbitrary number further out. And the real hard stuff is to understand training the beginner is vastly different process than when you train the expert. And often when we talk of even say convergence, we spend so much time right at that dot where all the convergence is occurring, but that's like later on. So trying to coach and mentor and help someone in that dot is not, it's not appropriate, it's not relevant in the
Yeah,
moment.
you know, just thinking though, it's interesting because we didn't talk about this before the class. You were like, oh, I'll explain it in there, but it's not saying just because you're a new beginner, say you're 22 and you're joining the workforce, it's not saying when you're a beginner at that level, it's saying you might be learning a new skill that you
Mhm.
don't have right now as a
Yes.
48-year-old. You're a beginner.
Mhm.
That is so hard,
Yes.
right? It's like, wait, I'm a beginner at this. I'm 48 years old. How can I be a beginner at this? I mean, like, I think that I feel is a big part of the challenge of ego and how you look
I
and
love this
the
topic.
fragility of, you know?
So I love this topic. So one of our investors, a guy named Stan Schrager, he was the global head of HR for JP Morgan Chase. So I mean, he's been with us for like 25 years as an investor.
Yeah.
And he had shared this early on, like this was even a while back. So as the global head of HR, he spent a lot of time with executives who went from headquarters in New York to like
Yeah.
different global offices around the world. I mean, JP Morgan Chase is probably the biggest bank in the
Cool.
world now. And he was talking about the difference of a junior employee versus a senior employee and what tends to happen. A junior employee, almost like a factory level, like they just keep climbing up skill after skill and they kind of can't do a lot in the beginning and they build up skills. A senior employee, usually the single hardest thing is to unlearn an old routine, an old automatic. They fight it so much that you'll
Right.
see no improvement for the longest time.
Right.
But once they decide
Mm.
to kind of stop holding on to it, to unlearn, the speed that they learn is so much higher. So that hockey
point.
stick diagram
Mhm.
is what you
That's a
tend
good
to
point.
see in senior people.
Right.
They tend to be like nothing. And you're like,
Right.
and the junior people are just marching along and getting
Yeah.
better and better. But once the senior person decides to
Yeah,
unlearn.
it's a decision to
Right?
unlearn.
And-
It's like a
and-
moment, it's like a breakthrough moment.
And when
where-
I say decision, I go back to the mindset. Mindset is filled with stories.
Right.
Our stories and what we tell ourselves drive our mindset. And our storytelling skills, I think I put that
Yeah,
here.
that's gonna be good.
Yeah,
This
so
is
our
good.
storytelling skills, when you're aware of how rapidly you are telling a story. Think of Michael Phelps jumps in the water, Olympics, boom, water hits. The speed that his story had to be in place, so he just
Mhm.
doesn't skip a beat. Because remember,
Yeah.
the Olympics is a fraction of a second is gold or not, right? And so that speed of
Right.
storytelling is often harder to decipher the more experienced you are,
Right.
because it's happening so fast. But if you're able to recognize there is a story, we're always narrating stories, and then you're able to start to recognize the old story.
So the old stories that are
and drop it, right?
like all
That's keeping you
convergent though,
flat.
would be like a mental model. Like, so, at my age or my experience I've gone through, I have my own set of mental models. Tom will have his own, Big Papa has his own stories that we tell ourselves that got us to where we are now. That's like the protection. These
And-
stories, these mental models got me to where I
and
am,
yet
and
I
now I
don't
have to
know-
maybe unlearn one.
And you get, I don't think it's so easy or obvious, meaning usually high stress situations are where your
Yes.
automatics show up.
Right.
Right? And the more senior you get, and you'll see the difference of someone junior is they just say whatever they're thinking. And you're like, how could you say that? They're like, well, that was on my mind. Versus the more
Yeah.
senior they are, we carefully craft
Yeah.
what we're thinking. We're managing optics
True.
so
True.
But when it's super high stress, you're startled, you'll see
Yeah.
the truth comes out.
Right.
Right? And so when you catch these truths, you start to be able to have an opportunity to unpack what visual, what story, what movie, boom, played right there. And when you
Right.
decide, wait, that no longer serves me, and I need a equally usually I say equally, you need an aggressive replacement story. And if you don't have a replacement story, you'll see as a seasoned, routine, automated story that shows up as a senior person, you almost can't change. And that's why this whole flatlining until it suddenly hockey sticks. So that was a interesting pattern Stan Schrager, global head of HR at Chase, had found and seen early on. So, which is why this red versus green box, there's nothing to like worry about. You know, the whole Steve Jobs, like stay foolish, like the beginner mindset is a learnable skill. And the more senior we are, we tend not to actually like legitimately embrace beginner mindset. And so with tech and how fast it's moving and AI and stuff, beginner mindset's going to matter a lot. And you'll see as a senior person, if you are able to tap beginner mindset, you will learn faster than someone who is just starting. So there's a history of looking at all the data, and JP Morgan Chase being a 300,000 plus employee firm. There's a lot of data that backs this. Anyway, so this was actually something that I may have shared before. Mike Collette had shared this. I liked it a lot. This idea that it's not what happened to you that matters most. It's how you explain it to yourself, which is all coming down to storytelling. And you realize so many things in life where we're attaching an emotional story. And remember, the key is the emotional story. Stories that have no emotion. It's like when you watch a great movie or you have a great experience, whether in a restaurant or whatever it might be, it's the emotion that you end up remembering. And the emotion gives you either a green light or a red light, right? It's like eject and run away, it's bad for me, or it's like, wow, I like that. And so there are visuals that happen really fast. It's almost like little like YouTube shorts in many ways, but super faster than shorts. But this tweet was all around the fact that when you look at elite performers, they're master storytellers. And the notion that you can actually rep and train this skill. And it's very hard to recognize. This is the harder part, that beginner to expert. The older you get, it's harder to recognize we're doing it automatically. And until we can figure out what we're doing, it's often hard to shut down that story that's no longer serving your goals, no longer serving you. So we'll come back to some of this. So unlocking self-drive. The more we're going into the work and around what is the human skill? If AI can enhance it, what is the human skill? And self-drive, another synonym for it is agency. This cartoon of just like help, but then you have the person realizing, wait, I can use the wood to make a boat, right? And the notion of learning how to go save yourself, how to go and get things done. So unlocking self-drive, we're finding as a theme, is turning out to be the biggest challenge. And in the past, by the way, one of the nuances we found was the younger individuals this is going into college, even high school, especially when the internet first came around. And one of our investors is Ram Shriram, who was the first angel investor, first 5 in Google. But he also sold his first company to Jeff Bezos at Amazon for $1 billion. So did really well. But he had always said that the younger generation, the difference between them and the older, and younger being high school and college, because in that time when we first met him, the internet and mobile, they just played that sport more. So he said they were the best at it. The older you get, you tend to make less mistakes. But that same skill that makes you make less mistakes makes you take less risk. And so everything is, well, that won't work. We've tried that, won't work. And so that notion of not being truly open-minded, everything is, nope, seen it, doesn't work, can't work. The younger side is what he called ignorance and fire, right? I mean, they're just like, I don't know why you can't work. Try this now. And when you're in a window where there's new tools, new technologies, changing environments, something that didn't work before you try now and suddenly might work, right? So there's a lot of changes that occur. And so his point was the younger group makes a lot of mistakes, but they're also the ones that innovate. Now, I would say that statement is no longer true, despite the fact that, yes, people tend to take more risk when they're younger and all the, startup, less fear. But social media has created so much fear. You look at mental health and the comparisons. You meet any high school or college kid, the amount of conformity that occurs not in the old factory way, but driven by what's online and what you can say and can't say and what you can think. Like there's an insane amount of fear that actually showed up in how to use your mind, self-drive correctly,
Right.
right? As in, what do you think?
Right.
It's instantly fear-driven of what can I not say and what can
Yeah.
I say?
What
So
should I be
so
thinking?
this shift is something that we saw, and I feel it's at a breaking point right now, but that's interesting. So by going into this self-drive turning out to be the biggest challenge, we don't believe it's just for senior people, it's also moving as low as even high school. It's turning out to be a big challenge. So this piece will break down unlocking self-drive. It's turning out to be the biggest challenge we're finding as a theme in people all ages. The human skill is knowing how to do that, which is around agency. And AI enhances agency. AI enhances the human skill. But if you don't have the human skill, you're asking AI to drive. You're asking instead of self-drive, it's AI drives. And the human is supposed to just sit and watch. And to recognize that this is a trainable skill. And by default, because of the last 100 years, we have the exact opposite skill that's been trained. As in what's been trained and what's been automatically conditioned into every form of our life, starting from early school all the way to now. We're hardwired in our automatic to do the exact opposite of agency. Yeah. Like we are hardwired into everything we believe is right or wrong from everyone around us, from the education system to how companies run.
It's not what you want to do, it's what
Do
you
the
have to do.
opposite of self-drive.
Yeah.
It's someone decided. Someone decided what's right and what's wrong. Someone decided strategy, the real decisions that matter, and everything is conforming to it. Conformity is kind of baked into how we operate. So trying to train that, you have to realize how much unlearning we have to do. And the more successful you are, you will see this gets harder, right? Kind of like Stan Schrager found. So
This is fascinating. This, you guys should read this.
so Gary Tan is an individual. It's fascinating. I think he was like the photographer for this group Y Combinator, which is the most well-known startup incubator in the world. So he's a CEO now of Y Combinator. And so he highlighted this article written by the head data scientist and engineer at Replit. Replit's being used for like vibe coding and using AI to code. It's talking about how agency is eating the world. And what he's saying from his view, watching probably the best vantage point of new ideas and innovative startups being created, is that the two most important things in the world from here is no longer what school you went to or what your resume looks like. So it's like, think of like LinkedIn, right? All your resume vitals, what it looks like, or even your credentials. A Harvard, degree is worth more, say, than a Tufts degree. I went to Tufts, so my sister went to Harvard, but long feud there. But and he's saying the thing that matters much more than credentials from school or how your resume looks is the amount of agency you can bring to the table. And the second thing he put is taste. But taste and agency, I believe, kind of lead to the same place.
Is it, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna read at the bottom here. It says a solo operator can now launch $1 billion business powered by AI. Our economy's critical dividing line is no longer skill or education, it's will. Will is like your ability, that's agency, that's drive, determination, like that's up to you, like that is it's so
And
very
like
profound.
years ago, we spent around like 6 months with Josh Wakeskin,
Yeah.
and we talked a lot, this is going way back, about he was like a chess champion of the world and other things as well. But we talked about how when you look at the best, when they fall apart, it's rarely a technical skill. It's almost always a psychological slip, which is connected to will.
Yeah.
And so, but we were talking about this, this notion.
I think this is fascinating conversation. So then you guys have maybe heard the phrase, or have you heard like transference skills? So if you're good at one thing, you should be able to transfer the skills you learn there into anything you want to do. Transference. Talked about that for like over a decade plus. It is so much harder in practice. You think because I'm good at, say, I don't know, I'm making it up, because I'm good at dance, I can learn how to do math. If I learn how to do, if Josh Wakeskin was a great example of this, he took chess, he became the chess champion of the world, and then years later transferred the skill of learning into being the #1 Tai Chi player in the world. That's a mental sport of chess to what is perceived to be a physical sport.
Mhm.
That's crazy if you think about it. #1 at both. That's saying you can transfer skills. Well, what's the skill? The skill is learning because those are two different sports completely.
I think we had taught a earlier lip class about Annie Duke. She was one of the poker champions in the world,
Right.
talking about far transference
Oh,
versus
yeah.
near transference. Like if you're really good at chess,
Mhm.
it's easier to become really great at checkers.
True.
Um,
That's a good point.
But
Yeah,
that might not transfer to other things in life.
right.
But when you think of certain things that have far transference, as in
Yeah,
agency, self-drive is one.
right.
Learning is one. Decision-making is one.
Mhm.
So like, these are the things that if you master those, it's almost like you can master anything you touch in life.
Right.
As opposed to when you master just how to use spreadsheets well, what's happening is people have gone really good. Almost every analyst in investment banking, I mean, they're spreadsheet wizards with shortcuts and whatnot. Suddenly AI comes along and it's like, boom, that skill is no longer needed. And so this is
Yeah.
where a lot of logical kind of like skills, intellectual skills are
Right.
getting replaced very fast. Like if you're a fast reader, right?
Mhm.
Of course it adds some value,
Yeah,
but now with AI, you can't read that fast. AI reads way faster than any human can.
Right.
And with greater accuracy. So this is the whole disruption that's occurring. I think Greg, our head of Perks at Work, is traveling around visiting some of our clients. And the common theme he's hearing from very large companies is they're all scared shitless. I mean, very large companies scared shitless of what to do. A lot of them have either been banned from even using AI, they're not even touching it,
Yeah.
and they're not sure what's happening at the senior levels, what decision is coming down. Are we getting replaced? Are we firing? Are we like forcing people to come back to the office? And they're sitting there as nerve-wracked as like, are the tariffs going to destroy the world? Are we going to fall into like these siloed
Yeah.
castles? And just what's going to happen? And so there's a lot of hand-wringing, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear. And so what do you do, right? And the idea of agency and what that is, so this article, I just highlighted parts of it. And it might be interesting to understand. So this idea that what AI has done, right? And there's a lot of people that talk that, AI will replace human beings. And it's reshaping the economy. It's becoming clear, right? That it's not going to replace human ingenuity, meaning human beings innovate, human beings creating something new. AI is not going to replace. AI instead is amplifying it. This is a notion as AI will amplify, it will enhance the right human skill. He said the critical dividing line in our economy is no longer simply education or specialization, right? We've specialized in being an analyst or specialized in this, but it's agency. And I like this definition of agency. It's the raw determination to make things happen without waiting for permission. Without waiting for permission. Think of how many of us are literally trained and automated our skill to wait for permission. And the reason you don't do something, well, I haven't been given permission. I'm looking for approval. It goes on to talk about just kind of the most successful, it's interesting, it talks about how like what AI has done and how it went to what the market wanted. The most successful AI products today are reactive, not proactive, as in they don't exhibit genuine independence, primarily because that's what the customers want. Programs that listen when told what to do, and high agency people like literally create their own path. And so this is where AI is built as that tool. Now, I think there's a lot of predictions with AGI. AGI is when AI is supposed to kind of go off on its own, like the old Terminator movies where it's now self-learning and whatnot. Some have predicted, like I think Elon or maybe Sam Altman, that this year AGI will start to show up. Many are saying 5 to 10 years from now is when it starts to really learn upon itself, so get smarter than any human being. And it will on the logical front, but on this intuitive front, this judgment, this is something, if history proves correct, it will be roughly another 95 years before you see that replacement, which means that in our lifetimes now, as well as most of our children, learning this human skill is critical to succeed. That the technology will predominantly be based not it being, once again, reactive, as in you tell it what to do, it'll get it done better than any other like intern or flock of
Yeah.
employees will do or consultants will do. And so that notion of needing to learn proactive skills, agency, self-drive. At the end, it was talking about this whole new world, right? It's just collapsed in this person's view, agency or no agency. And this transition will take time, will be far from painless. Institutions built around credentials won't go away gently into the night. Middle management will keep the fight head count because it will take time to shift away from the idea that more people working on a problem signals a more important problem. This is something that, how many people reported to you?
Yeah.
How
It's
many
always
people do
been
you
a
have in your
metric of
company?
Success,
Right?
it must be
If
really,
you
yeah.
have more people reporting into you, it must mean that you're more powerful. It must mean that the problem is greater. And so headcount became the single biggest proxy to like strength or difficulty of problem. And that is no longer true, and that will be fought for a while. It said schools and colleges will take a while to adapt their teaching methods and content. So this is the same slide, kind of just with some of our handwriting on it. When you think about agency, right? Make things happen is what do I want to do? To answer the question of what do I want to do, and then the raw determination is going after it. And I highlighted in red, the waiting for permission is removed. And so we had shared in the last leadership in practice class, this belief in your VX. That's the North Star, the direction. That's what do you want? And then belief in your ability to figure it out. Belief in that you can iterate to success. And we were just talking upstairs about this, we were doing breakfast with Laura. Like, it's amazing, actually, it's
Different
coming up.
topic, a different topic. I think
It's coming up.
we're coming back to this notion of transference. The way you just said, what do I want? And my belief that I could go after it. We all have
This is
figured
the
something
last.
out. We have all figured out self-drive. That's all, we have something that we're great at, right? Whether it's really small, big, something, we have something we're great at, which means our brain has worked perfectly to get us there. It means we have all the right skills and narratives and stories and routines that we tell ourselves to make ourselves fantastic at something. But why, but this notion of wanting to transfer it to something else, what else do I want? I feel like this is a conversation we were having this morning. You might feel like the thing you're great at is like, I'm just more natural at it. It comes natural to me. You know that phrase, it comes natural to me? You weren't born with it being natural to you, right?
Mhm.
Which means something else can become second nature to you, it can become natural, but you have to believe that, which is why sometimes you have to look back and be like, I wasn't born great at cooking. I wasn't born great at math or great at singing. I wasn't born that way. Like I learned my way there, which means you could apply that to anything. But I think that's a very hard, because we think it was somebody, and we were just talking about how somebody might say, oh, you were really good at that. And then they're like, you're a really good singer, Laura. I'm like, oh, I like that. That made me feel good. And then you go to school, for my son anyways, he's good at rapping. And you go to school and I think he feels really stupid. But people praise him for singing and rapping and dancing. So he's narrated, I'm really good at this and I really suck at this, right? I'm never going to fix it. School is not for me. This is for me.
And by the way, the word that quickly fills in is interest.
Yeah,
I'm not interested in
that's his
school,
favorite word.
but I'm interested in this. And we don't realize success
Yeah.
and momentum,
Yeah.
of course, makes anything interesting.
Yeah, you
And the
get
more
progress.
praise you get.
Progress and
right?
praise and
Or the other
momentum.
one, the more laughter you get, the more criticism, you actually become less interested.
Yeah.
Um,
One gives you dopamine, one makes you feel like crap. And so like, you're naturally gonna keep doing the thing that's giving you that hit that feels
Mhm.
really good. You're gonna keep
Yes.
doing it. And then you get better at it. And the better you get at it, the more you like it. The more you like it, the more you work harder at it. The harder you work at it, the better you get at it. It's like that's a self-fulfilling. You can do it, right? But
and we were saying how so much of what we tend to be good at or great at, we stumble upon it accidentally, and then we can no longer figure out what the hell happened from beginner to where I am now.
Yeah.
And is that a skill?
Is that a skill?
Can I learn it?
That's the thing.
Apply
When
it?
we say it came natural to me, it's not natural. It's actually a skill.
Mhm.
But we think we're born that way. Even though you might not say that, it feels like one was, I
Or-
was born with and the other one I
or-
can't.
Or the other part is we think we have to accidentally trip on something.
Yeah,
And if almost the star didn't align and we didn't trip correctly, so we don't get hurt, but
yeah,
we accidentally discovered rapping or music or
Yeah.
this, and then only through those kind of accidents can I find success,
Mhm.
right? So we're just waiting for the stars to align and boom, and that's not agency, as you can
Right.
imagine, right? That's when you feel like I just have to wait for the circumstance to hit. Um,
Making me think in schools, like even the term gifted,
Mhm.
like it makes it sound like you're just bequeathed this, whatever.
If you're
it
not
is.
gifted, you are
Then-
not bequeathed.
Yeah.
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 Like haves and have it. Steve is saying in the chat that being trained to wait for permission is making him think about courage reps. And that the reps are in the places where you are waiting for permission.
Yes, so we'll touch on that in the third topic. In all honesty, which I feel is counterintuitive to that, so this is all from last class. But just one last slide on this topic here. We wrote here, this skill of thinking big, which is the same as the slide before, right? With the belief in the North Star. Think big and then acting in a gated fashion versus the common mistake is this. People think big or thought big and acted big and you go broke. This is a common mistake we've seen. People are like, I have to think big. And then they think big and boom, fire a shot. They go out of business, they go broke. There's the flip side. They're only thinking incrementally. In the old action, we call it the +1. And in fact, that got so built into our culture, it would drive me nuts. Everyone would just look to do +1s. But the problem is +1s are great in refining something that already took a big shot,
Yeah,
that took a big advancement. But when everyone's just looking for +1s, they're looking only for somebody else to come up with the big,
And then
thoughts that work,
right.
and then they can only add to it.
Yeah.
So only incremental thinking, incremental acting. And so this was a discussion I had with Laura upstairs, this notion of how do you train yourself to not worry about being foolish versus would rather worry of not finding great. Meaning like you need to feel okay and good. And in fact, maybe realize it's a requirement to iterate correctly. I need to try some crazy foolish stuff.
yeah,
And in the process, I should worry more of not finding great. I want to build something great. This
yeah,
notion of like, it's not the Elon Musk, what have you done the last week? No, like, are you pursuing something great? Are you always pursuing something great? And in the pursuit of something great, which is that VX belief, are you experimenting in like bold ways fast? Like, are you moving with like, this is a crazy idea, I'm gonna try it. I'm sorry I offended you, but like, that's not what I meant. So I'm gonna learn. Everything is,
What was it that Sam Altman, we were looking this, some video this week about Sam Altman from OpenAI, talking about how they would make so many, I forget what he called them, he didn't call them spectacular failures, but in the process of being really stupid, you're gonna find some dramatically brilliant ideas.
Mhm.
That's how it happens. You might have a stack of 100 and things that make you look really stupid, terrible ideas, and one thing that is absolutely brilliant that you never would have stumbled upon. But we're
Right.
trying to avoid the 99, like really embarrassing, really like awful
so
experiments that
Amy
blow up.
Edmondson from Harvard, so she came and spoke at our company a while back. We got to know her pretty well. And she wrote the book, The Right Kind of Wrong, I think. And so she was like #1 like author, I think last year, maybe the year before as well. But it talks about how the right kind of wrong, like people say fail fast, like make sure, is the failures that you learn something from. If you gain a new insight that you didn't know because of that failure, that's a worthy failure. Meaning failures, I think of as like tuition. Someone is paying a price. Often you are as well, whether it's your brand, your reputation,
Yeah.
time, money. Failures cost money. So people who go around and just recklessly fail, I like are usually scared of it. They're bad people, right? And they eventually will learn because the world will correct them. But when you realize, no, it's always about underwriting failures. It's underwriting investments in failure, right? That was the term Josh Wason used,
Loss, yeah.
investment in loss. You're making investments in losing, in failing. But to get the right investments that teach you new insights and lessons, you have to be bold enough. And the problem is if you only test a little incremental and don't test anything, most of us just push out something that looks the exact same. We push out mediocrity and guess what we get back in feedback? No signal, no reaction, low calorie reaction. As a result of it, we never actually iterate. We never advance. So this is something that leads right to the next topic, which is raw honesty is the building block of ages. So a couple slides here. Once again, it's a lot of messy notes, so stay with me on this. We were mapping out, and actually the AI coach has helped us refine some of this. There's a combination of two things that need to show up. This is my note, so I'm just going to use it to help guide through this. But there are two skills that come together. One is what I really think. And this is crazy that this idea of, we like the word raw honesty. When you say like, truth tends to have, there's like one right truth.
Someone's
So
truth, yeah.
maybe I'm just not good at knowing the truth. Raw honesty is your own reaction. And there's a whole program we built called 0-0. 0% hesitation, 0% calculation. So meaning, like, there is danger when you get reactive with raw honesty and publish it or say it online or in front of, your boss when it comes to performance reviews or like staff meetings. There could be places that are dangerous, with a Wall Street Journal reporter, but there are much less places than you think, meaning the danger is overdone in our minds. We are surrounded by more safety than you realize when it comes down to the intellectual task of 0-0, of automatically giving raw honesty versus as soon as you start pausing and hesitating, which by the way, our mind works really fast, it then starts to calculate how you're going to respond. And before you know it, we shifted raw honesty, right? The 0-0 into what I think you want me to think, or I think you want me to say, versus trying to tap into what I really think, much harder than it is. So I'll break that down in the next
Well,
slide.
it's interesting because we talked about this the other day. When you hesitate to say what you're really thinking, which is your intuitive thought of what you're thinking, it goes logical.
Yes.
And logical will lead you to manipulation. And that's a terrible word, but calculation, manipulation, whatever you want to call it. But the logical, you're starting to analyze what's right, what you think is the right thing to say and do, which makes you start to manipulate a bit. Said it another way, you start to lie, which is a really dangerous thing, right? You start to have all these hidden things that you're trying to get across, but not actually sharing that. But I feel like the jump from intuition, here's what I want to say, but the second I hesitate, boom, now I'm starting to be logical. Then the logical turns into analyzing, and the analyzing makes me think, what's the right thing for this situation? What should I be saying or doing? I don't want to offend anybody. Now all of a sudden you're not getting real. You're getting some sort of distorted thing.
And it happens
Right?
so fast when I
Yeah.
think about the
Have
automatic
seconds.
skill of raw honesty versus what you should do is have to work to not have raw honesty.
God, that makes me
Meaning-
realize why over time, for years, Charlie will always
Yep.
have his pick up his sorry, you just did it. When you're not, it's like almost like not your turn to talk, right? You immediately will go, and then you'll see I'm talking and you start to write down what you're thinking. And I think it's a trained skill to make sure you don't filter. Maybe you're so
Yes,
far from
yes,
that. I just feel like
yes.
in general, it's like such a little hack to write down what the real thought was,
Yes.
you know?
It's capturing my
Capturing your visceral, because it's so easy to change it.
Yes.
You see Big Papa nods a certain way, you're like, oh, maybe that, whatever. Somebody looked at you like, I'm a little bit confused, maybe that's not quite it. Like, you start to change it. Like, it's so, I mean, Weiwei was sharing some of that too, and some of his reflection and some of the work, is that you start to change it because we're social animals. I can see your body language right now is saying, you don't know what the heck I'm saying. So I'm gonna change what I'm thinking. Like, the room is,
And
not
the
getting it.
power to be able to, and maybe
Yeah.
the automated skill that I write it down,
Write it down.
is that the power to be able to say, like after I heard people speak or react,
But you'll still share
this is
that.
what I initially thought,
Yes, you
right?
do
And
that.
based on what Laura just said,
Yeah,
here's how I changed.
but I
And that
changed my mind.
notion of being able to break down your thinking at that starting point where I'm now, it's not even
it,
ending point,
right,
where I'm now.
Yeah, right.
That's a
Rep skill.
trainable skill.
That's learning in
Right?
public, and that's, making it easy for other people to then share that. Actually, I was thinking this, but after you said that, it
Yes.
changed my point of view, which is a really hard thing for people to
We
share.
get,
I changed my mind.
we get influenced so rapidly.
Yeah.
Our thinking adapts socially to not
Yeah.
create conflict, socially to get agreement
Yeah.
so rapidly that we lose that 0-0.
Yeah,
This
totally.
in the decision making, those of you know, developmental GPS or dev GPS, we always said the foundation, the starting point was dev GPS 5, which is all around basically raw honesty. And the opposite being lying, hiding, faking. Peter Gorman, who we did a lot of work with, who like cured people who lost the ability to walk, after 6 years of rehab and start walking in 90 days. His work always was around that. It's amazing what the truth does. Meaning, if we are able to actually get raw honesty and then kind of get feedback and reactions against my raw honesty, you will improve.
Yeah.
Human beings are wired to literally
Yeah.
self-correct. Human beings are wired
It
to
is.
actually learn and improve. And we
Yeah.
saw this from Jim Fadigan as well, who
Yeah.
created the Sesame Street character. We spent time with him. We're wired the right way,
Mhm.
but because of the distortions,
Mhm.
the misleading elements of what I think you want me to say and do, and then I'm not quite sure what I think, before you know it, like why we're so confused is, I don't even know what I'm thinking.
Right.
You actually, and it's so automatic that it's harder than you think, that the conditioning that's been done in the world, and oddly, the information age, social media magnify through all kinds of sharing and likes and memes and whatnot, that what I really think is much harder to find than you can imagine. Once you get past that foundation and building block, then it's the what do I want to do, which is tied to agency. Agency is what do you want to do, and then what they say, the whole persistent element to getting it done. And so the AI coach called that committed ownership. And the word ownership is used a lot, but I love the word committed next to it. Committed ownership. There's a big mindset shift from being a contributor. I'm contributing. I want to add value. A lot of people say these kind of high-level generic statements, but a committed owner acts very differently. Setbacks don't stop them. That I wrote over here, relentless puzzling to win. A setback is simply, you know what? I took a shitty draft, or I tried an idea, it didn't work. You keep iterating until you strike gold. And that notion of committed ownership, the precursor building block though, is the raw honesty. This was kind of more from the AI coach, that the raw honesty, what I really think, combined with committed ownership, what I want to do. And this takes work to shift. And so we'll touch on some of this. But this, I thought, was a great way to think of raw honesty. So at the bottom of this piece, they're talking about how, here's the catch, affirmations fail when your inner feeling don't align with your words. The notion of what you're saying, even what you're signaling, nodding, smiling, whatever it might be, it doesn't align with what you're feeling inside. And we are trained on the optics front of saying the right words, giving the right reaction in a group of individuals, or looking for, oh my God, someone's got to react first. And then if it looks like that's the trend, I'm going to jump on that too. You will not have agency when these two things don't match. And the notion of matching your inner voice with your outer voice, and usually it's not even voice, it's an inner feeling. Your inner feeling matching with your outer speech, with your outer, voice of what you communicate. When they match perfectly, and perfectly is so difficult, it will never fully be, but an attempt to get closer, that's authenticity. That is ultimately the true definition of integrity. That is how you find raw honesty. And it is like trying to eat healthy and diet. It is a constant, very difficult, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm going a little off on this, but like it's a challenge every day, right? It's a challenge every day where,
Yes.
yes, I was walking by a bakery and I was like, God, it smells so good. It's just a
Yeah.
challenge.
It's a
Right?
challenge.
Shows up. Yes. Then Maria shows up, makes a blueberry thing.
It makes a blueberry pie before you go
Jesus.
home and you're like,
Um,
great. I'll have that.
So how we give up agency, there are two thoughts here. One is authority bias, right? If someone's an expert, so you kind of give up your own agency very fast. Also comfort in the crowd. That's what everyone said. That's what everyone thinks.
Yeah.
Think of how conditioned we are on authority bias, given the command and control org chart structure we came from in the industrial age, as well as the comfort in the crowd, right? Everyone said we're doing this, right? Everyone liked this, everyone forwarded this, it must be true.
Well, that's what
This is
school is, and right, I mean, that's what school, right? You're supposed to have authority, because you gotta do what the teacher says, and you are safer in the crowd of kids, like you don't wanna stand out. Unless
No.
you're gifted, of course, but.
But then even then, there's like a
Even
crowd
then,
of them
yeah.
together.
True.
Now, before you know it, like you're not quite sure
Yeah.
what I really want to do.
most children are geniuses, like they've studied that, and then it gets beaten out through the education system.
Yeah.
Most children between the ages of 0 and 3 test through the fucking roof, and
Yeah.
then by the time they're
Yeah.
12 years old and they
Yeah.
retest, it's a small percentage that have managed to keep that brilliant, so
Yes.
we're doing something wrong.
Yes, yeah.
And,
I know
and
we had a meme years we show about education. It's like a machine. The kids, it's like in color. They look gorgeous. They look happy. They've got all these ideas and they go through the education system. They come out and they're like gray, black and white, look miserable, have information being shoved down their
Right.
mouth. It's horrible.
so this leads to this
Okay.
next point of danger of feedback
Is
too
this the
soon.
last lesson, guys?
No, I
Maybe
think-
one
I think
more,
there's
two more.
Three more. We're flying through, right?
We are, and they're only like really quick and then we can.
Okay,
let's
so
talk.
there's only one slide on this one. So this one, I have to break this down and help you through this. So raw honesty has A and then there's.
Is
so,
Jackie like, whoa?
yeah, so think level one, level
help
two,
me
and raw
through this.
honesty before I go to level one and level two, and kind of think, I put self, which is better me, the BM is better me, and the others is better you. So meaning the first foundation, and this is kind of coming in the details of the more people we coached, what we found as a theme was this: getting past your trained conformity, getting past what we are conditioned to do and say automatically, conditioned to think automatically, is much harder than you realize. And to get to the point where you're aware of what you're doing, that's when you know you're past level one of raw honesty. So level one.
Mhm.
So you have to be able to find a way to slow it down enough to realize, shit, I just said that, or I thought that. And that's like kind of what the trained conformity part is. And it takes a while
To be
before
aware of it
you can
first.
become aware of it.
Yes.
Level two then is digging into my own point of view. This is much harder than people actually think. You have to dig and dig and dig, and you have to say, is that really what I think? And then what we talked a lot about is this thing called LOI, ladders of inference. Ladders of inference is whatever you feel or think, you have to be able to back it up with, okay, this is my logic in there, and this is the assumptions I'm making. You dig and dig and dig. And instead of going less, which is what we tend to do, digging is going to have you go much more, elaborate. Like every time you explain something, you're like digging. But why am I thinking that? And you're like, because of this. And the more you add, it's the rep of digging. And until you do that, you will not find your raw honesty. So at level one, the top one, you have to learn to recognize and dial down the trained conformity, and then dig to the point of you can find your own point of view. Then comes this external part, interacting with others. Can you explain what you're thinking? Meaning the ability to explain comes in verbal communication, but also comes in handwriting and whiteboarding. And
Mhm.
can you explain? Because see, until you can explain, you can't really get feedback. So I put over here, you earn feedback once you get to this part where you've moved past the trained conformity, you're digging to the point of understanding your point of view, and then I can explain what the hell I'm thinking.
Mm.
All these things you see are steps. And once you do that, feedback comes in. And that feedback now is giving you good advice, meaning it's reacting to your point of view that you explained well enough that I can actually react. So which might give you an insight that helps you iterate versus we're getting feedback on, I'm just saying what everyone,
Well, otherwise you're just getting feedback on your understanding of somebody else's point of view.
or like you're trained what everyone's supposed to say,
Yeah.
right? Everyone's on the internet supposed to say in this topic.
Right.
You're just getting reactive to that.
Right.
And that's not your point of view, and you're not even sure what your point of view is. And until you can explain it, right? In a way that someone else can understand, you'll see that they don't react properly.
Yeah.
You'll see that the meeting, the presentation, the
Yeah.
conversation didn't result in a lot of learning, a lot
Yeah.
of insights. And so that's the notion of feedback too early. So you can see how these things take reps and effort before you can get to a place where, oh my God, I now can like,
It's interesting, it has just maybe a concrete example, it made me think of, we did a lot of work in early education years ago too, and private school, one of the best like in the country in education, and she said, when kids come up to her in kindergarten, whatever, younger grades, lower grades, and say, like, almost like they want to know, is this right? They want a feedback. They want to know, am I doing it right? And the letters will be all messed up. It doesn't quite make sense. And they train their teachers to say, it looks good. Like, meaning you're not going to get a lot from me. You're not going to get, this is right, that's wrong, fix this, do this. Like, just sort of trained to say, looks good, like, try not to give them direction, like, it was actually really hard to do, right? Not
'Cause
give,
the point is, kids are so conditioned from early on
Yeah.
to have a binary yes, no,
yeah,
that they're looking for that every
like-
step of the way. So the best early learning teachers are trained to give them like a low
Very little.
calorie, undescriptive,
yeah,
sort of like,
non-answer,
going,
keep going.
right?
Let's
They're
keep
like, wait,
going.
is it good or bad there? Just keep going,
Keep
right?
going, keep going.
Right?
Yeah, don't
Every-
direct you.
Every master teacher in acting does that.
Mm.
And it's very triggering for actors because exactly all along the way of training, it's a lot of detailed feedback, direction, etc. But master teachers, the real
Mm.
masters, detach and just wait and
Yeah.
wait and maybe we'll drop one thing
Tiny little
into your
nugget.
brain for you
Yes.
to iterate
Mhm.
on so that the creativity
Yeah.
can flow and they don't obstruct what might otherwise emerge given
Yeah.
a little more time.
Yeah.
Now here's where, on one hand, see, that's good, and here's how it fails. Imagine being surrounded as adults now by people who give you feedback like that. You're like, I want to know. Like, it will absolutely make a difference in my life if you can be truthful with me. You're like, looks good, right? You're like, wait, like, was it good or bad? You're like,
Mm,
what do you think? And
Yeah,
how much we're trained in that consultative coaching where I don't have to stick my neck out
true.
and I can just
That's-
play exactly middle of the road. So like, you think it's bad?
Yeah,
Well, like, that's really good points, right? Why you think it's bad. And then you're like, well, Charlie, do you think it's bad? Well, I'm listening to what you said and you seem to think it's bad. And I think you probably know it better than I do.
yeah,
Like, we're getting masterful at avoiding a point of view, even in giving feedbacks.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
why you'll see where the bad on bad occurs. I'm not even speaking from my own point of view. I'm not even explaining it well. And then the people around me are trained to also
Mm,
do the exact same thing. And so suddenly it's like, what are we meeting about?
right.
What are we talking about? Like, is the time we're spending worth it?
Mhm.
And you'll see it's not. So suddenly it's like everyone work remote, right? Everyone no need to even go on Zoom, right? Human interaction unneeded, right?
It's all mediocrity anyway, it's not.
And if you look at the bulk of what AI is spitting back, because the bulk of the content on the internet is that, it by default does this. And so to learn to even use AI properly to get brutal truth, like there was I
Yeah.
sent people put prompts of like, they write a paragraph of how to get real truth. And remember way back when AI came back, when I said way back, like 2 years, a year and a half ago, there's this whole thing about if you ask AI to speak to you like they were a Navy SEALs, like coach, they are more honest. But then they said the most premium honesty comes if you say, treat me like a Starship Enterprise captain. And it's like, to me, it's dumb that that's where you got to go to versus put those gimmicks aside. Let's learn first to train to get past our conformity, find my own point of view,
Mhm.
learn to explain it, communicate it. And from there, you will see when you hit that truth, that raw honesty, you will also encourage and have a better shot of getting others to do real feedback.
Do you want to look at this question from Santiago
yeah,
now,
yeah.
or do we want to go on?
Sure,
to
I
it?
don't know what it is.
Santiago is saying, I've been struggling with finding the right balance. Sometimes I take too long processing my own, I think he means like reaction or feedback. I miss the chance to iterate with others, meaning in high pressure moments, I can act fast, but I don't always share what I truly think. How do you manage moving quickly while still staying aligned with your deeper point of view?
Very, very good
Yeah, it's a good question.
So when you think of team to mission, I think mission like any project, any situation you're in versus team, just think about yourself in this case, right?
Yeah.
Human being, right, to some situation. When you find yourself, and this is a situation where you're basically shutting down, right?
Mhm.
Shut down
Yeah,
in the
shut
sense
down.
of your mind's not running at full speed,
Right.
right? It like kind of is like, when you feel like you're falling behind the discussion, the conversation, everything
yes.
step behind and I can't process. And then so that as a result of it, and this is where mental chatter and spirals occur very fast.
Mhm.
It means very much like physical sports. You're playing in a situation that's too difficult relative to your skill level. Look for something one notch down. Look for something maybe that happens again, one notch down. You will find some situation that's
Mhm.
easier enough.
Mhm.
And this is where what
train
we
it.
trained in our leadership academy was, remember the bottom of the notch down was what we called self-driven. There's some self-driven topic. Kathy, it's travel. Like for Megan, it was like, like physical fitness, like in health. Like there's some place where you will get to where like, you're like, you know what? your mind operates completely without chatter and your reaction
Yeah.
time is so rapid. And so the reason we had individuals identify that is to realize that, no, nothing's wrong with your brain. You don't have some mental disorder or setback. You literally just are not skilled enough to be calm in that situation.
Yeah.
Michael Phelps trained himself to be calm when he goes blind diving into the Olympic, pool,
Mhm.
like in real time. That's trainable.
Mhm.
So what you have to do is notch down to an easier situation, but then play equally aggressively, equal urgency. What we tend to do is usually in high stress, important situations, we're like, oh my God, I can't think fast enough, reaction time, speed, processing everything.
Yeah.
We go to an easier one and then we kind of shut our mind off and we
Right.
go mentally lazy.
Yeah.
Instead of doing that, act like, okay, like I'm gonna put my full mind share and produce something. Remember I said, think big, right? Think about like creating something great. Whatever it is, it might be like how everyone interacts at lunch today. You're like, I'm gonna make it the best lunch you've ever been part of, right? Try that. And you'll see like the stress goes up, the higher the standard you set.
Mhm.
So you can take something easier, raise the bar, and see how you do.
Yeah.
And if that's still too hard, then get to a lower bar situation. There comes a point where you can find where
Training, you
Yes.
can actually train it without being so
It's-
static in your head,
oh,
shut
this is
down.
exactly how fitness trainers will
Yeah,
train you. They
failure
push you to the
point.
point of failure when you want to lift
Yeah.
for biceps. And they notch it down and then they push until they can find the exact training point. And they keep training and then one day they just say, I just have 5 pounds more. And you're like, oh my God, this is where I failed last time. You got stronger. And now once you feel that progress of getting stronger, you're like, how far can I go? Right? You start to realize it's almost endless, except for bicep lifting, which I'm not quite sure. I mean, there isn't. Next topic, the new lazy. And this is kind of the new lazy in the information age. It's a form of mental laziness. I found this image, I liked it, where, the mom walks in, right? I mean, the kid is completely overwhelmed, right? Probably having a mental breakdown. And me showing clear symptoms of mental illness and the mom is seeing it as lazy. Now, there are kids who are also
How
good at
come you
faking
picked
this.
this one? Why'd you
So,
pick this image just then?
Because you were talking about Matthew this morning, like, oh,
Oh, what did I say? Oh, Brendan.
or Brendan, but,
Did
so
not want to go to
anyways,
school.
this is cartoon, but not the point I want to make. This was a great,
Yeah, this is really interesting, you guys. Peter Thiel, right? At the
so he
extreme,
was a co-founder of
of PayPal.
PayPal.
At the extreme, optimism and pessimism are the same thing. Meaning if you're extremely pessimistic, you're saying there's nothing you can do, bless you. If you're extremely pessimistic, that means there's nothing you can do. What can you do? There's nothing you can do. It's just gonna be really bad. But if you're extremely optimistic, you're also saying there's nothing you need to do. It's gonna work out. Everything's gonna be great. That both extreme optimism and extreme pessimism converge on laziness. I never saw it this way. So I'm definitely more of a pessimism. I have such an innate hate for people who are so extremely optimistic because what I see in them is them saying, everything's gonna be great, don't worry, sleep well at night, all is good. And I find that to be the most reckless thing you could say but I also, if I'm like, there's nothing you could, it's so bad, we're gonna lose, we're gonna die, everything is bad. That's also really lazy, right? That's very reckless because you're saying don't do anything. Both, and so I have to work on my balance. Obviously, both extremes are really bad and extreme. I think we all skew it one way, but it's just so interesting to think at the extreme, it's both lazy. I used to think just the lazier one was the more extreme optimism, right? I'm like, right, that's just saying, don't worry, be happy, everything's good, it'll all work out. But the opposite is true, right? Being
And
really
so
negative is,
There was a whole nother
Do
class
nothing.
that we were considering teaching, which is all around this notion of noise versus signal when it comes to decision making. Sense making is the precursor before you start to make decisions fast. But your ability when you're making sense of things, rapid sense making, there's a lot of noise and how to figure out nope, as in being able to say no to information very fast and very aggressively allows you to figure out, okay, here's signal, and then is there something to do?
right?
That's always is there something to do based on signal? But you have to first step through noise versus signal, which is much harder to do than people think. Then is there something to do? Versus you realize people who are extremely pessimistic are like, no, it's almost like written in the cards. it's gonna end, right? It's gonna end badly. So you can try all you want, but it's gonna end badly. And you'll see that notion makes you not have belief, not only in it will work out,
You will look
but
for
definitely
things.
you will not iterate and you will not find detail, which will go to the next slide on nuances. But optimism does the same thing. When you're like, it always works out. See, there's no action. There's nothing that is part of your agency, your self-driven acts and experiments that gets you to succeed. It's just gonna work out anyways.
Right.
And the harsh part is, all of these things, they both converge on laziness. And the laziness allows you to give up your own agency. And I think this is happening often for, like kids struggle with this too. Parents like, it always works out. Don't worry, like, there's truth to that, but there are a lot of times you kind of have to worry, right? And so there's
Yeah.
this notion of, well, how do you figure out what's noise? I can say, no, don't worry, or what I should worry about. And it's very connected to, is there something to do? If you analyze it, is there something to do? And when you get to a place of like, there's nothing to do, if you keep then feeding it and keep ruminating on that, or keep thinking, well, like, you'll realize we get ourselves into a place of just mental laziness. And to recognize this, which now combined with the second point, this is from the last leadership practice class about narrow aperture versus wide aperture. And this is the difference of the industrial age command and control. But I just said the slide before, both extreme optimism and extreme pessimism. It's about pessimism,
Make you do
right?
nothing.
Make you do nothing.
Yes.
Narrow aperture. What's interesting about narrow aperture, right, is that there's no options and choices. Innovation, those who actually learn how to play in this chaotic, uncertain world, well, they see it's the nuances of navigating, like in the details and fast. And so when you have wide aperture, you see the opposite of someone who has narrow aperture. Wide aperture, you start to see so many options and choices. There's so many things that you could do. But if you are narrow aperture, we talk a lot about this, when you get scared, when you start narrating fear, when you start narrating like everything, I think the last class we had a slew of emotions, guilt, shame, fear, anger. When you start to narrate certain emotions up, our aperture literally, it's almost like your eyesight just goes. It's like the old days, or even now when you shut your TV off, you know, it just goes, and you see almost like through a pipe. It's so narrow. And so of course you're like, I don't think there's anything to do. And the reason why there's something to do is because you can't see the different nuances. Narrow aperture tends to lead to blunt logic, and you fixate on blunt information. You fixate on one data point and you overweight it, and that one data point leads to a binary like, yep, do nothing, do something, do this. So actions tend to be blunt. And when you have to explain yourself, your explanation literally makes it seem like we're in an industrial age world where, don't we always do this? I thought it's always yes, or it's always no. And then it's like, well, what's the data point on it? It's just one data point, like, or two data points. It's very blunt.
I was gonna say something about
Yeah.
that. I think that there's something around the training of, and I think that happens a lot. I mean, coming from different cultures, it's sometimes easier to see. But it used to be that if you studied something and you had a career in something, that's what you did and that's where you stayed. And I feel that that has a lot to do with that narrow aperture. And I was like, you come, and I sort of see it coming to this country as an adult and coming from cultures where you're supposed to do many things because there is a need for you to know how to do many different things because you don't know which of those things are going to give you an opportunity for work or money, let's say. So when you come, the United States had a vision which has changed, I think, in the last 20 years, but it was, you're a copywriter, you will be copywriting,
Specialist.
and that's your specialty, and that's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And if you came with a resume or skills that were very open, they
Like a
didn't know where to,
generalist.
they didn't know where to
Right.
put you.
Yes,
Yeah.
And it was very hard to find work or to find
Yes.
agency,
yes.
because you had to sort of take all those things off to be able to specify into one thing. I think it has changed a little bit, but being a jack of all trades was always like a bad thing.
Yeah.
And they always had that, you don't know how to do anything very well.
Right.
They always had to finish that off by that
Yeah.
sentence, and I feel that that is exactly the training that happens a lot in the world of of work
Mhm.
is that you're supposed to be very specific and very trained in this one thing, and that's what you're good at. And they want to wipe out that idea of you being able to be versatile. And I think when you come from other cultures, especially where be work or having to have 2 or 3 different types of jobs or opportunities gives you that aperture, but
Yes.
you're trained to close it after.
Right.
And that to me is a major problem because it takes away that idea.
No, this is an excellent point, because this is, once again, the shift seems so rapid,
Mhm.
it almost makes no sense. We're not used to, like, I don't understand how do you go to Harvard University
not
and you
get
can't
an
even get a
interview.
first interview? You can't even get one interview for a full year.
Yeah.
That's like close to half the class. These stats are starting to go insane, like what's showing up. And it's like, that makes no sense. I thought if I just did that, that's almost guaranteed. In the same way, like, how do you get a computer science degree and not even get a single interview? I went to Stanford, 4.0 GPA, not one interview. These are coming up faster, where you were convinced that if you specialized in computer science, jobs are guaranteed. No longer the case, and this is what's happening. The tech and AI, the more specialized something is, it's logical.
Yeah,
So AI can figure that out faster.
right.
The more wide the aperture and the more general, like, the AI can't connect the dots.
Mhm.
And that notion of needing to connect disparate dots to figure out what to do in an iterative fashion and move, that's where it technically, I mean, or historically, it says 95 more years before AI will do that fully. Which means in our lifetime, that's not going to show up besides early tests and early examples. So this whole specialist, and it's fascinating what you're mentioning about kind of immigrants coming in. Usually you're like, I'm going to a place where it has a lot more opportunity. I
Mhm.
need to be open because I don't know what situation I might land in, right? Which reminds me of
Yeah.
the work we did studying how the Army traditionally trained in the US versus the Marines. Army always had a plan. They even have a plan when aliens land on Earth. But the Marines were always trained that whatever situation I drop you in, you have to rapidly assess the situation and then move. Like a lot of immigrants
You'll
came in
figure it
that
out.
way.
Mhm.
They came in
With
kind of like the
with
Marines.
a vast group of skills, and then you figure out which might work. And that also might evolve as you're doing it.
Right.
But I think that the US mindset has always been more about specialization and wiping out the other opportunities, like
And,
just
and
focus
as
on
you
this.
did, it
Right.
rewarded you getting paid more and just start
Yeah.
moving up natural levels.
Right.
Length of service is a huge
And
term,
if you
right?
decide to change, it always means you're gonna make less money.
Oh, yeah, right. You're
Yes.
shifting
And then now
gears.
you've just started a new career, and
All
that's
over again, from
crazy
the
and
beginning.
bonkers.
Right.
Back to level 1, 2, 3, and try to go
Right.
back up. That's changed. And this is where, because the specialist now is like AI.
Yeah.
You can direct it to do everything, and the cost and the speed is so rapid. It's knowing what you want it to do. That's the agency. So when you think of these new skills of agency, the ability to learn in a situation, to have, courage has become a new trait more than confidence. Confidence can be faked. Courage is different. Right? Confidence can be like tied to like how you look, how you stand, but courage is a vastly different skill. And then this notion of, can you make decisions fast enough? So these are the high, like far transference. These are the new skills.
Mhm.
School's still stuck.
Yeah.
And school historically will adapt last. Work will adapt first, but we're in that change, like literally right now. But this is spot on, right? So narrow apertures now, I just punchline up, it's a wrecking ball logic. You start to do stuff and you're like, what the hell were you thinking? It's a wrecking ball to most projects and organizations. Was this the
Different
last
than
one?
Mo
Oh, yeah,
Record.
yeah, so,
Different than Mo Record.
last thought here before we go more questions. Learning and teaching are totally opposite skills. And this is a nuance that came up in a lot of interesting discussions. Oftentimes when experts, someone who's succeeded teaches, language matters a lot. The story and the tightness of the example and story matters a lot. So they teach you something that you're like, oh, that's what you got to do. But what you
No, I don't know what you're thinking right now. I'm so curious.
Here,
Like an
here, let me
example.
show you the
We'll give you an
notes.
example. Yeah.
So BM stands for better me, BY stands for better you, which is learning versus teaching. When it comes to learning, there is a lot of intuition. It is very messy. And usually the litmus test, remember litmus tests are not 100% accurate, but directionally accurate. A litmus test when you're learning something is you cannot explain why. Why are you doing this? I'm not quite sure, but like it's like the idea of convergence of skills. I think it's going to be important. I'm just doing this. Versus on the better use side, it tends to be more logical. Wrote this here, the premature measurement makes you do the wrong thing. In the same way, if you're prematurely trying to teach and you're prematurely trying to explain, present, and if you're organized and coherent, chances are like you're trying to jump to maturing something when it's not. So I'll give you the one of the interesting examples. Spent a lot of time with this guy, Simon Sinek, and everyone talks about what is your why? What is your why? And it's a statement. And I spent a lot of time with him, and it was like the statement he would help someone create, but something wouldn't work. And it's the order that matters. We are trained in the industrial age to first come up with a statement. We come up with a mission statement, with the visual, come up with like what sounds easy to explain and logical and emotional, it just packaged right. And then the learning is supposed to follow, and it works the other way. And this is where, once again, no longer logical skills that's taken over by AI. Think of going no longer in light, clear situations. That AI can do. Go to situations where it's ambiguous, dark, and unknown. That's where the human being has to go as a skill. When you go into those situations, what we found as a consistent theme is those who are growing, truly learning, they're unable to even properly explain what they're doing. They're unable to explain why they're doing that and how that fits with that, and there are things they're not seeing. And so there's a level of messiness in them explaining their own growth. Later on, once they hit a certain plateau,
Yeah.
they can then look for like
How to
the
explain it,
logical,
right.
condensed explanation. And once they do that, you will see their level of growth goes to a new level, because you're now refining down to the brilliance of what we call brilliance in the basics.
Yeah.
The ability to pinpoint, that thing weighted more in sequence before the next thing. But if you do it in the beginning, and this is the slide I had early on about the beginner mindset versus the expert mindset, we find a lot of people don't grow because they think not being able to explain something means that they're doing the wrong thing, versus we have found the complete opposite. If you're unable to explain it, you might be in the exact right space. If you are not there and you can explain it, that's usually what I would call conditioned conformity, or you're full of shit. Like, and you're thinking, because I said it and someone nods and confirms for me that, wow, you have a really good mission. I love what you're doing. And you're thinking, okay, it sounds like I should be further along than I am. That's the good litmus test bullshit meter. So learning versus teaching.
There's also like a difference between teaching and showing. So many languages like French, Italian, Spanish, teaching means to show, enseñar, or in French as well. Showing somebody how to do something instead of teaching, because teaching is more active. The verb to teach is more about, not only am I showing you, but I'm telling you
Yeah.
how it is. So there is a difference in even in the language, the root of the words are different, and it literally signifies something very different.
Yes. And so this is where, this was an interesting discuskin years ago. We have Josh Wakeskin on this, where the chess guy, he talked about what he called armchair professors. Teaching, unfortunately, is too synonymous with armchair professors. They're not doing it. They're really good at lecturing of what you should do, based on a book they read, a talk they saw, or a little meme they found. The internet's full of that, right? People who do not know what they're doing in their bones, versus the difference of the great teachers, right? Which is the new form,
Yeah.
is literally they know it in their bones. They learned it in the trenches. And this is where you'll see the nuances. And that's the whole narrow aperture versus wide. They know something in the nuances, and they know, like, because they've been there themselves, and that's the better me first. And when they teach, they're teach, share, show, it's synonymous. But even for those people who are like, know it in their bones, we're like, put armchair professors out, know it in their bones, the process of how they got there starts in that messy, unexplainable,
Mhm.
before they can actually explain. So before you can break things down to like steps and sequence and whatnot, at the beginning, it's almost like you're just going, like, it's messy. It's like you're just going after a whole bunch of stuff to converge, and you'll see convergence can take a while, but once it does is when the real results show up. It's when other people notice. At that juncture, you can try to refine to be able to share and teach. And so this is where we kind of are in a world where if I could tweet it and someone likes it, it must mean, you
Must
know,
mean I figured
I'm
out how to
teaching good
teach
stuff.
it,
And
yeah.
that's where the wrong signals come in. Premature measurement, right?
All right, we'll small slide this, you guys, if there's a few minutes, if you want to do some questions, there's a few maybe in the chat, maybe we may have already got to them, but there's a lot of topics in here. Next week we have the first Thursday, so it'll be, what,
Plant-based.
Danny's probably gonna teach something on plant-based food, is my guess, to go along with the microplastics, and the Oscar award-winning guy is vegan and plant-based, right? So I think we won't be teaching anything about how to cook.
You might be really depressed after the
We're
movie.
gonna like, Big Papa, can you make us some
Yeah,
meat?
no, so the movie on microplastics
Yeah.
combined with the guy who did the movie Game
Oh.
Changers.
We're gonna
on
need a
how
lot of
plant-based
alcohol, that
diets.
might be what we need.
Yeah, no, so like,
And some.
someone's gotta invent like a tequila that drains out the plastic.
Ooh.
And somehow like lets you process meat better. Once you do
That'd be
that, It's like
amazing.
fermenting the right meat in your body and you're like, wow. Right?
Yeah,
Questions, thoughts, like anything,
so the topic,
Reactions?
or any visceral things that you liked the most,
Yeah,
so these
anyone?
topics of, at a high level, why leadership is so difficult in today's environment. It's convergence of skills, there's unlocking self-drive is the hardest, raw honesty is the building block of agency, the danger of feedback too soon, the new lazy, extreme optimism and extreme pessimism, and then the last one was the learning versus teaching, and that they're opposites.
By the way, in the new lazy, I would add the narrow aperture, which we can rapidly mentally narrate up fear and ways to create narrow aperture, which is the whole notion of deprivation, curiosity, misbelief by Danny Arelli. That also makes you lazy because you can't even see options and choices. Right? So there's a whole bunch of work there too. But
Yeah, I thought there was some good conversation on, pessimistic leading to no action, as well as being optimistic and leading to no action.
Mm.
That's something that I have kind of been dealing with for maybe the last 5 or 6 months.
Yeah,
In retrospect, just kind of looking. Actually, I'm extremely optimistic.
yeah,
And everything
Yeah.
always works out. Anyway, I'm 43
yeah.
and I'm still here,
I'm
like
still
kicking.
here, yeah,
But it's a matter of how, I think, when I put that up against the map of, am I accomplishing my goals in time? And am I giving myself all the time in the world, or am I like, no, this has to be done in this, with this sense of urgency?
And when I think about this idea of we talked one of the earlier lib classes, high agency versus low agency. I think of high agency when you feel like I am driving my life, meaning like it's not always going to be I do something and I get a return, but I am literally building and experimenting towards stuff and I can map it out.
Yeah.
And you can see and feel it often in when I share that slide with belief. You can feel the difference of someone who has in the trenches learned, right? And this is the litmus test, a level of steadiness on what they're pursuing, that belief in the North Star DX, combined with the figure it out, not just attitude, but literally they can break down the iteration belief.
Well, I was just gonna say that, isn't part of the exercise, say, for someone like Big Papa to look back on the belief that I can iterate my way to success? I've iterated my way there before. Do you have to go through the actual stories of things that you,
I don't.
is that
like,
part of it?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I
You know,
do.
the idea of
I do.
WPS too,
I
like
gotta,
go
I
back
gotta
and
see
say,
things that I've done because it's the same industry. It's not like I'm going from cooking
yeah,
to
like a. yeah,
engineering or
something.
architecture.
Yeah,
It's the
right,
same industry.
right.
But one thing that
But
gets
in the
me through that.
nuances though, I feel like this is where I feel, because you were saying this idea of pessimism, optimism, the extreme, there's answers in the nuances. You obviously, given where you are, figured out iterations in details. And I feel like we don't remember all the details, so, I'll look back and say, oh, we succeeded here, we did this, we were able to do this, but they're like, almost like big stories that have like not a lot of detail, because I forget some of the details, so,
I'll give you an interesting example. I mean, Crystal and Kwong in a London office helped build the AI coach.
Okay.
they forgot how difficult it was for them to build the product of the AI coach.
Right,
They're now working on integrating the whole like marketing product
okay.
and sort of the, almost like the cover of the product itself. And they're so frustrated at
Yeah.
the lack of return, they're like, this feels impossible. I'm not good at this. I don't like this. And I'm
Right,
like, no. That was the exact same thing that happened, but they already forgot. That's exactly how they were, meaning even for Big Papa, you will forget how it was in that beginner portion of learning how to be a chef.
yeah,
Now you're moving on to stack on the next skill set. It could be a business owner, it could be a,
yeah,
like, there's a, and instead of going into like beginner mindset and remembering what that was, we remember it incorrectly and believe it should be easier. And that's what
That's what I'm
leads you to
saying. You
have
have to go-
extreme
yeah.
optimism. I'm already like famous, or I'm already good.
Mhm.
This should come to me naturally. And
Mhm.
every skill set, this is the Stan Trigger insight, the HR head, like more seasoned you are, you struggle to go back to beginner mindset. When you think of a convergence of a bunch of skills before you can really do something big, like to be able to reboot to when you first learn how to, or try to become a chef, the way you were talked to, treated, right? And they may have looked at you like you're never gonna make it, right? You just pick another career when all that
Yeah.
chatter to recognize that's the state. And I need narrative stories to get past that, to build this other skill that's gonna factor in it. And then there might be many more like that before they all converge together. That's a very difficult pill for people to swallow. It
Yeah.
feels like, that sounds exhausting.
It's
Right?
okay though.
Right?
If you line up, like I'm finding myself lining up with younger chefs
Mhm.
who haven't taken the same steps that I've already taken, but definitely have what it takes. And just drawn off of that power and that motivation
The
to
danger.
be humble enough to go back and say, all right, let's do this again.
But can I tell you the danger that happens a lot is this, when something gets very difficult, we look for mental highs. We get highs by going back to something that's easy for us right now. And yes, you can add value, but there's a part, and this is the whole, even the teaching versus the sharing notion. The people who are at the top of their game, they're almost always feeding both teaching and the self-learning, which is why I was saying, Big Papa, when you come to Next Jump here on Thursdays, we want to call you Little Papa. So you have the equal balance of being expert and mentoring and coaching, but then having the complete opposite skill of being a beginner. And then when you are feeding both, you'll see that cycle of both is actually the highest form of learning. Like you are, and they're because they're opposite, you'll see it, people struggle with it. Once you become an expert, people struggle to become a beginner. Yeah. So what were you gonna say?
I had made a note when I was making my notes about after the real magic happens when your beliefs and speech match perfectly, creating unstoppable power and transformation, that when you think that you are in alignment and you discover that you're still stuck, that there is an unconscious agenda. And that in order to get to that place where you are actually completely synced up, if you discover that, like, I think that this is what I want, this is what I'm working toward, and why is this still not coming together?
Yeah.
Your unconscious has an agenda.
Yeah,
And in order to do that, you have to go a little bit deeper. You have to start asking yourself some really deep questions going into this dark stuckness, this thing that you consciously dislike, and ask yourself some really hard questions, meaning, what do I like about this? What pleasure am I getting out of this stuckness, which is very, very challenging with your ego because you don't like it, right? But you have to go into what the unconscious agenda is in a painful way to find the pleasure point, and that's how it will sort of help you resolve and bring these things all together in your external reality.
you were saying something like you get pleasure out, last week you were saying like you get pleasure out of some of the things that
Yes.
you know are kind of gross about yourself, like
100%.
there's like I
Some
forget
of
how
the
you
things
said
that
it.
you dislike the most about yourself, like
Yeah.
personal habits, being broke, your relationship with food, the things that can make you feel really, really consciously icky, but
Yeah.
then you struggle with
Yeah,
and judge because the external world judges. Your unconscious has an agenda around that thinks this is good for you.
right.
And so until you meet consciously meet
Yeah.
Mhm.
your unconscious
Yes.
agenda
He calls it
with
hidden-
pleasure,
Yeah, you
it's
call it
going to
hidden
continue
agenda. Is that
to
the same
hinder
thing?
your external.
There's a
Yeah,
nuance here
yeah.
that's really important. That first, it's unconscious agenda.
Yeah.
So, Bob Keegan, who wrote the book on
Yeah.
immunity change with Lisa Lade, they
Mm.
talk about this where there's this immune system that's gonna fight. And when you look at everything about growth, there's a part that's, love yourself, accept yourself is an absolute statement that's true. But then the part of growth is that then I have to not want what I have now. I want to get better. So then there's, instead of one data point, there's two data points.
Mm.
What I want, what I believe is the right thing that I want to pursue is not like matching up to where I am now, right? That's like driving, right? Like I want to go to point, B, but I'm in point A, I want to go to B. And the
Mhm.
gap between that makes us very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And especially if you're putting in effort, energy, you've declared and you've tried and it's not working, it feels a lot better to smash the two together saying the goal was unrealistic and this is kind of what I really want is just kind of what I have, right? And so that's the unconscious agenda is the icky feeling we have of this gap.
The gap, yeah,
Trying to close it is the very thing that takes away drive.
yeah.
It's the very thing that takes away any reason to learn anything, right? It's like I have everything I need to learn. And
Yeah.
so that's like very hard for people to recognize. That's an automatic that happens in us when people are great, when they first take a job, first get promoted, when they first write a business plan, they're so energized. As they start anything, the difficulty shows up. And then from where they expected they would be in a certain time frame to where they really are, and as that gap is there, that unconscious agenda comes from trying to in your mind and even optically remove that gap.
Mhm.
And that's lethal for distortion, right?
Yeah.
That's where the raw honesty is no longer raw. It's like
Mhm.
it's lethal for recognizing it is a natural separation of point A to point B.
Yeah, and sometimes there have been studies that have shown that when you speak too much as if something has already happened,
Mhm.
it actually soothes that part of you and takes your
Yes.
willpower and drive.
Remember the whole
out.
yoga
Oh,
nidra?
yeah,
What do you want? What do you want? I already have it.
Right.
Oh my God,
Just
I already
say,
have
I
it.
already have
I'm
it.
like,
I
it's
not
already
true.
imagined
There are
it.
places
I
it's
experienced
true.
The pleasure
Yes.
of this
Yes.
vision for my
Yes.
life, and then it kind of
Many
kills the
times-
willpower to make it happen.
And this is the hardest part with, once again, not logical. See, the logical part is you calculate it, it's either there or not.
Mhm.
But the judgment part, the whole intuitive part is wait, the two aren't true. These two truths can sit and they're opposing. It's
Yeah.
you should be happy where you are, happy with yourself, totally true statement.
Mhm. Yeah.
Then there's okay, you ready for the next part? You should be unhappy with where you are. You should have an incredible drive to get way better, way higher than what you have. And they're like, wait, I thought the advice was be happy where I am.
Yeah.
No, but you're not gonna stay stagnant.
Right.
The human brain, even with Jim
Yeah.
Fadigan was it's wired to grow. It's
Mhm.
wired to learn, get better. So you're not gonna stay stagnant. And the research has shown too for human beings, if you accept and stay stagnant, your body actually shuts down. So you physically will die, which is what's odd. It was hard for people to understand. Stress actually keeps us alive. The act of actually pursuing something difficult, and meaningful too, of course, it matters, because sometimes difficult can only be I just need to survive, right? But when you pursue something stressful, it forces you to have to grow. Okay, there's a slide I threw in here. That was tied to this, this idea that,
Yeah.
they always say in the gym, right? The hard things don't get easier, you get stronger, but the difference on the mind versus the body is vastly different. So I pointed to essay now, situational awareness now, and the weights. Certain situations just require the strongest mental version of you. And so it is not a physical impediment. It's literally in your mind. And unlike physical, you can almost always do it. But often
So-
it is not an automatic skill.
Okay, so this is a good example, because when Santiago, you answered his question, it was almost like, Santiago, you're going static, you're sort of shutting down, it's too hard for you, it's almost like the weight is too much right now, so go down. Wait, because I was gonna bring that up, and I'm like, it's a nuance we just talked about before we came in here, so there are situations where you have to I don't know how you wanna say it, man up, like find a way to like
So-
get your brain back.
Jim Lear
It's
did
saying
this.
that's the
So-
hardest skills, get
so-
your brain back when you're under incredible
So,
stress.
so remember Jim Lear, the whole story he would share is that you have children, exhausting day at work.
Yeah,
You
right,
come
right.
home and they're like, Dad or Mom, let's play a game of Monopoly. And he's like, what you're saying in your head is, I'd rather shoot my brains out than play Monopoly. You're
Yeah.
kidding me.
Yeah,
And so that's literally what happens to a lot of us. And then he tells a story
yeah.
saying that, how about this? I'm gonna make you, right?
Mhm.
Walk 2 marathons back to back. That's like 52 miles, right?
Right.
I'm gonna walk 52 miles right now, not even like
And
with
people
sleep.
are
Just,
like, I can't do
right?
that, like,
and then
yeah.
he's like, but if I narrate a story, I bet you can.
Yeah.
And if I said that your entire family is held at gunpoint, and if you do not walk 2 marathons back to back right now, they all die. And you instantly find
You find
the
a way.
ability to do it. Meaning,
Yeah,
it's a story,
it's a story.
right? And he's like, right there on the spot, you went from I can't play Monopoly
Mhm.
to like, I can't walk 2 marathons back to back.
Mhm,
And the point was the mind. And the skills on the storytelling is so premature
Yeah.
or
mhm.
immature.
Immature, it's
We
very
don't
immature.
recognize, even the Santiago thing,
Yeah,
even in that instance, he can if he
can.
narrated a strong enough
Right,
story.
right,
And just like Michael Phelps, right? He narrated, but his was so fast and automatic.
Right.
He didn't even lose a fraction of a second and won gold. Most of us are untrained, so the startling will
right,
take us a little bit out.
right.
But to be able to go
Get
back in,
yeah,
right?
get back
as
in
in
it.
re-engage, that's
Yeah.
the muscle, right? And so
Yeah.
usually,
That
very much
practice
like
of
physical
storytelling.
sports, the fitness measurement of someone is not how much they can lift, but it's how they get to the point of failure in any exercise, whether it's on strength training or even running or whatever it is, heart rate, and then how long it takes to recover before they can come back and do the same thing again. So point of failure and the time it takes for you to recover, that is the best measurement of your fitness health. So those who are really out of shape can't do it again till like the next day. But athletes can literally even, you
So
look
you're saying
at the NBA, 20-second timeout, right? Literally, that's all they need and boom.
So you're saying in a mental sport, you're saying your ability to recover, say you're in a meeting and it's like going way too fast, you feel anxious, you're scared, you're like, I'm not tracking now, I'm in my head, to tell yourself a story to get yourself right back. How
So
quickly
the
you can do
speed that you can go back fully engaged,
Yeah,
right? And that
yeah,
amount of time.
re-engage, the
And
reset.
some are not good enough that whatever startled you, it might take the whole meeting, it might take maybe the whole day, it might take an overnight.
Mhm.
But this notion of, and this is where you have to be mindful. If you go into, oh my God, I think I'm gonna have some brain disease,
Mhm.
and maybe I just never get figured, like, you'll see it gets longer because your mind is actually telling you it much worse than actually it
Yeah.
is. Versus this notion of even in Santiago's case, like
Yeah.
the Jim Lear story, right? Every member of your family will die if you don't get back in the game in
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Trust me, you can do it.
Yeah.
Right? And so that ability, and I've been saying this for a while, this idea of the stories we need often to get back in the game are much more exaggerated and extreme
Yeah,
than we think.
yeah, we think
Versus-
just telling ourselves, I should be able to do this, I'm better than this, I can engage. No, that's not enough.
It's gotta be life or death.
It feels like you gotta.
Versus
yeah.
we narrate these kind of like
Weaker.
coddly stories. You're better than this. I believe in you. You can do this,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
You know, you got
yeah.
better than last
Yeah.
time. It's like, that's not how Jim Lear would talk
Right.
about. I mean, the story literally is every member of your family at gunpoint will be shot unless
Yeah.
you walk 2 marathons back to back. It's like one of those, wait, how did it go from Monopoly to that?
Yeah.
Right? Playing Monopoly when I come home turned into a story of, every member of my family dying.
Well, life is that serious still, Charlie.
But I'm saying, if you want to bring out the strongest version,
You gotta bring those stories
that's the
out,
kind of
yeah,
story you need.
Yeah,
And we're not used to it.
no.
That's like
Not on a
that
daily
sounds a little
basis.
extreme,
Unless
Right?
you're an actor.
unless you're an actor, right? Or, an employee of a
Or
company.
you-
But the idea that you
Yeah.
would come in every day and every meeting you're at, think, I gotta find a way to get my full brain on right here, right now, and if I don't, my family is gonna die and perish. And, you
Well,
can't,
it's
that,
The opposite, almost like on the negative, like to keep us from actually doing and acting, we actually narrate like that much, like, oh my God, this is gonna be the worst thing ever. If I make a mistake, like,
yeah.
I see it almost in the opposite, not to like
Mhm.
motivate me, but instead to stop me.
But that's the extreme pessimism.
Mhm.
See, and start to realize, wait, that's being lazy. Because it converges to doing nothing. You'll see if, and I know the thought is, no, that's not what's happening. But, so whether it converges to nothing or the aperture goes, so you can't even see
Yeah,
options and choices.
yeah.
So like whether that negative spiral of extreme pessimism gets you to a place where like it's gonna fail no matter what, which is gonna ultimately make you not give it a fully engaged shot.
Mhm.
Or the aperture narrows, so you can't even see the levers. There's like all these little levers that you can move, but you won't even see them because you're like.
Mhm. Mhm.
So then what we tend to do is our phone or email, our computer, like we just literally look for master, tell me what to do. Oh, there's a red dot that says 3. Someone must need something. Like, it's like the computer is signaling and driving you, right? Like email came in and goes ding, bing. Like that was one of the things, remember, we train everyone, especially post-COVID, turn off those little alarms on the
Sound.
phone and the computer. Otherwise, you can't have deep thought. You can't have wide aperture because it's like the minute you start thinking, it's like ding, ding, ding. And so you're instantly drawn to, the computer. You become the slave.
All right. Stuff. We'll see you guys, for, test kitchen next week. See you with Chef Danny and
Chef Danny.
microplastics.
Sorry, that was a lot of content. For me,
No,
that's actually more lazy, but no.
I wanted to show there's a lot of different skills converging, so I was like, why don't we, the idea of saying there's many things, it's not just one thing, you're gonna need many things, so don't walk out of here thinking, oh, I got it this week, it's this, nope, it's not.
Yeah.
Nope, way harder than that, it's the same exercise, if I just do a squat every day, no, it's not that, right, just to maybe
It
make
literally
that
went
point.
into a debate.
But I
where
was like,
I
that
was
could
like, oh, we
confuse
could teach this,
everybody.
you could teach it. She's like, you need
I
all
was
of
like, I
that.
feel like we need
I
to
was like,
show that it truly is a
You
convergence.
need all of it, like
Right.
within the week, you know,
Mhm.
as soon as you start to
Mhm.
put things like 0 into play and not asking for permission and checking out your
Yeah.
RAVs and you're kind of doing your self inventory, it's like,
Yeah.
all right, now I'm out here, now what do I do?
Well, it was interesting because some of it started Saturday, we were, and then Monday, I was hitting upon almost all these topics came out organically through the challenge this week. Like, and so it was like, because we'll sit back on Wednesday night, we'll say, what's the most important thing we learned this week or that we're thinking about that's on our mind? I was like, it's like 6 things. It's not just one. It's not one. And we couldn't figure out how to like summarize it into one other than high leadership is so difficult in today's environment. That's why the title. It's because it's all of these things.
Mhm.
Hit upon all of them this week.
Yeah.
Like every single one.
Just means that you're exercising them
No, I
in your own world.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right.
That's what we're trying to
And
teach is
like I
that
said,
stuff.
convergence of skills is a very different sport than just kind of one at a time down an assembly line.
Yeah,
And so, which is why also this is it's hard to explain.
it is.
Like, and until it becomes part of your automatic, which takes enough reps, you'll see that it doesn't really work because you need too much effort just to do that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of figuring out what you want to build, it's like hammer to nail, boom. Like you're
Yeah.
focused on just, the
Yeah.
lever, not what you're trying to do with it,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's like
It'd be
obsessing
like
on-
in basketball, Mackie would be like, be like if you have to go out to a basketball court and you have to tell yourself, okay, dribbling, what 1 foot and forward and then do that. You're not gonna be able to play the game, It's like,
Oh, we're talking about
it has to
Messi.
be in your
He's like-
automatic. Yeah.
He's like the
So
best
good.
decision maker probably ever on soccer, right?
Mhm.
Now, I'm sure, I don't know what he does in the rest of his life, but like the amount of variables he's factoring in real time
Yeah.
while playing and winning and doing what looks impossible. He has
Yeah.
taken time and automated stuff.
He's automated
It's
so
just-
much that he can be like, ooh, I want to shoot with my left foot because that I'm more likely to get in, but you're on my left side. And he'll find a way to maneuver when there's an opportunity and do the harder thing to win. It's like, what? It's awesome.
And
Because everything else is
happening-
automated. It's all
happening in almost
automated. Yeah.
Immediacy.
Yeah.
Trainable, all trainable.
All trainable. He was not born famous soccer player.
Yes.
Framing helps it,
Yeah.
helps it happen, the way you look at the situations that you go through.
Actually, that's
Yeah,
another
that's
class I
another
do want
class.
to teach. I keep always talking
Yeah.
about learning the skill of reframe.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? In situations, to be able to see
Yeah.
a tough situation and rapidly reframe it as, oh my God, it's like a free education at Harvard.
That is a
Or it's
master
like
skill.
The top professor that I've always wanted to take a class with, it's always booked, you can never get into the class, said, you're invited today to come into the class. You're like, wow. Like that type of reframing, which is not extreme optimism, wow, I'm gonna do nothing,
Yeah.
but to attack it, to then in the trenches learn my lesson,
Yeah.
That skill, once again, is